Views and opinions of any of the guests of After Hours AM are not necessarily the views and opinions of After Hours AM, its hosts, its staff, or any of its affiliates.
Welcome to the After Hours program.
Are you ready?
It's alive, it's alive, it's alive!
Now broadcasting live from the After Hours AM studio, Joel Sturgis and Eric Olson.
Can't shake this terror from my head tonight. Alone and forsaken I bleed. A twisted vision, a tired mind, betrayed, a victim of shame. R.I.P. you're dead to me. You tore out my Frankenstein.
And good evening and welcome to this edition of After Hours AM. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis, and as always with me,
Eric Olson.
Eric, how you doing, man?
I've had a long and complex day, but I'm looking forward to the show tonight. It's always
don't
a
like-
nice, fun, intellectually stimulating break.
I don't like complex. I don't do complex well.
Yeah, well, I don't either.
I've had one of those days where you have to run here, run there, run everywhere, on the
Yes,
road,
I
doing things. It's
often
like,
have those days. And today was, in fact, one of
yeah, something like that. A day like that. Hard day. No fun
the
day.
remain open-ended and lots of running around, and there you go.
Yes. I know, but you know what? I did learn something really cool today. I learned a song on the old axe. That's right, the old Fender.
That is cool.
Yeah,
And what song might that be?
Easiest rock song ever written, arguably, of course, because others might not agree with me, but AC/DC's TNT.
TNT!
It really only has 3 chords.
3 chords and a cloud of dust.
Yeah, I mean, it just, really, guitar-wise, there isn't a whole lot to the song. I mean, the rhythm, of course, you need, but the chord, I was shocked that that's all there was 3 chords. Unless you do the crescendo, of course, or a guitar solo that he might do in some renditions. But other than that, it's pretty easy. I mean, relatively easy.
Simple. It's simple. It's not necessarily easy. 'Cause
Exactly.
It's not easy to do bar chords. You got to really work on them and work till it's just automatic.
Yeah, that is true. It's all muscle memory, I'm starting to realize.
Sure. It's just like any other sport, any other physical activity. You got to do it and do it and do it and do it and do it. And of course, there's the cliche of the 10,000 hours. Now you're not going to need any 10,000 hours.
No, thank you.
That's to be a professional and to be able to go out and really know whatever it is that you're trying to know and know it so well that you can then be creative and make your own and write your own and perform your own on top of that. That's that 10,000 hours.
I'm lucky to get 10 minutes a day sometimes of guitar practice.
I know. Probably your minimum to really, really make a difference is probably a half hour.
Yeah, that's what they say. But anyhow, it's been one of those weeks that has really been topsy-turvy, but also there's a lot of strange things going on in the world right now. I know we touched on Tuesday about what's going on in Cleveland, but you said in Baltimore there's a series of murders and homicides right now. What's going on with that? What have you heard on that?
I think they just... No one exactly knows what's going on, but their murder rate is up exponentially from what it usually is, and it's got to be tied into this malaise, that has come over the city. Some of that rate, of course, predates all of this that's going on right now, the protests and the police killing, that stuff. So I'm sure this has been something that's been brewing for some time, but even just compared to a year ago, so, we're talking recent past, I mean, their murder rate it's like exploded. And that is completely contrary to patterns just nationwide. I mean, just across the board. You name a city and their major crime rate, which would certainly include murder, is down. It's just been down, year over year over year over year. This has been going on now for the most part, for a few decades, that the major crime rate has been going down. And, of course, depending on your point of view, there's lots of reasons why that might be. Is it much more severe law enforcement? Is it 3 strikes and you're out? Is it the simple fact that we have such a large percentage of our criminals already locked up? We have by far the largest prison
it's
population
unreal. We have like the biggest
in the world.
Yeah, we have the largest and industrialized civilization. We are the largest prison population by far.
We love locking people up. So,
it's our thing, man.
What's
It's
the
what we
impact
do.
of that? Well, there's pluses and minuses. The pluses kind of occur obviously and right away. Namely, you're removing those people from access to the population, so they're not committing crimes. But, on the other hand, what's happening to those people? How many are being rehabilitated? How many are learning to be career criminals who might have otherwise just had, troubled youths and that kind of thing? So it's a very debatable situation. And, depending on your perspective, there's lots of reasons why the general rate of major crime is down. And, of course, that in general is a very good thing, but we need to keep looking forward, too. When these people who are incarcerated, this very high percentage of our population relative to the rest of the world who are incarcerated, what happens when they get out?
Yes.
So, what are they going to do? So, it's a very complicated question. As far as Baltimore itself, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm interested. My wife's sister, my sister-in-law, and her family have lived there and been in that area in suburban Baltimore for, most of their lives.
Sure.
My sister doesn't live too far away. She's down in suburban D.C. and Virginia, so it's not far at all. And, you wonder. And there's a lot of actually very nice things about Baltimore. It's a nice city. It has a real downtown. That whole intercoastal harbor thing is super cool. There's some neat suburbs, outlying areas, and interesting. And there's obviously all kinds of history. You're talking the Upper East Coast, so dating back to the beginning of the country. And right there in Baltimore was where Francis Scott Key wrote the Star Spangled Banner and all that kind of good stuff.
Sure, exactly. And basically, I hope things get back to somewhat normal soon with everything going on. But, we'll have to see where this really wild ride takes us. And as far as overcrowding, oh boy, that is a problem right now in the United States.
Well, and look at the history. Just take, for example, our book, The America's Most Haunted Book. And we're covering 10 pretty deeply, 20, 30, 40 pages each, looking deeply into the history and the tales and the stories associated with America's most haunted public and semi-public locations. And a good number of those, half or more in our book, were former institutions. Every single one of them was shut down due to problems related to overcrowding. So it's nothing new.
Yeah, it's not a new problem. It's just becoming a larger problem as we go. That's the bad part, because you can only build so many prisons before we have to fix what's broken. And some would say it is our justice system that's broken.
And it's so expensive, and the alternatives are, private prisons. That's been a big thing. Of course, the Republicans or the Libertarians, we're pushing that hard. Hey, let's privatize anything and everything we can. Who says that has to be a governmental function? Well, far as I can tell, what I've read about it and heard about it, as a rule, it hasn't gone very well at all, the private prisons.
Yeah, now
because
we're starting to go into constitutional issues and everything else with a private prison.
it's a whole different set of priorities.
Yeah,
they're
I mean,
to make money.
On one hand, people tell me that the prisons are so popular with the government because it's a ready-made workforce. What was it? One of my friends had recently got a new pair of glasses. And when she had asked, hey, where are these glasses made? The guy that was waiting on her said, hey, they're made in Kentucky by prisoners. Inmates making eyeglasses.
Sure.
It's its own industry, really, at the end.
And as you know, they pay them peanuts.
Well, yeah, what, a quarter an hour or some type of ridiculously low amount. But, and speaking of crime, though, did you hear what happened in Seattle?
Which Seattle thing are you referring
Well,
to?
a Seattle couple said a burglar stole a pair of sunglasses from their car but ignored something far more valuable, a $1 million winning Powerball ticket. Passed it right by. The couple who requested to be remain unnamed said they forgot to check the number on their Powerball ticket after it failed to win the $350 million jackpot in February. We didn't even think for a second that the prize could be $1 million, said one of the couple's spokespersons. And they went down to the Washington lottery office, and lo and behold, in their car that had been sitting there for 3 months, it was a $1 million Powerball ticket. But get this, the burglar actually only stole a pair of sunglasses and passed the Powerball ticket right up.
That is so funny, and is that poetic justice or what?
That is funny. Can you imagine now being that crook? Oh man, I had it in my hands.
I don't know though. If you think about the, all right. So if the crook, assuming he's a he, we don't know, but assuming he's a he, if he did try to cash it in though, wouldn't they be able to catch him that way?
Yes, you would think so. That he would turn in the ticket, but then again, there's no way to prove he didn't buy it. You know what I mean? There's not like there's a receipt.
I think you're right. It would become a he said, she said kind of situation.
So really, he might have been able to get it
or get some of it anyway.
Redeem it and then somehow get a payday off of it. But that, crooks, they deserve that. They deserve that.
Oh, very, very well deserved. I agree. No, I hadn't heard that one. That's a great story. That makes me happy.
Well, sometimes the good guys win, and sometimes... I've had my vehicle broken into a couple times, and it always makes me angry. When I was younger, I had a truck that did not lock. And so I tell you, man, the crook spent more time in my truck than I did.
Yeah, it's so much a function of where you are and where you park. And,
yes.
And what the state of your vehicle is, and do you have an alarm? These days, of course, are pretty much, I don't know, are there any cars that don't have built-in alarms? Probably, but
yeah, you'd have to.
Have them.
A lot of your used vehicles, I'm talking like maybe, early 2000s wouldn't maybe not have an alarm. Okay, if your vehicle has a tape deck in it as the main means of playing music, my money's on you don't have an alarm.
Yeah, that's probably true.
The
old tape.
Oh, I miss those old days, don't you? Don't you miss those?
I do.
Tape
I
deck?
remember my primary DJ truck from way back in the 80s when I had the big mobile and club DJ company in Southern California. And so I had my red Nissan truck. And boy, I knew I was going to be spending a lot of time in it because I had to drive all over hell and back in Southern California. I mean, it was nothing to drive 60, 70, 80 miles. And of course, the traffic there is awful, and it was awful still.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't any better in the 80s. It was awful then, too. Or it wasn't much better, put it that way. So anyway, I knew I'd be in the car a lot. And I figured I'd go with a, high-end audio system. And it really was a pretty good system. But, at that time, the source, other than radio, was cassette.
Yes, good days, good days. I remember having cassettes, of course, like everybody else. And I remember having a whole bunch of them. It was great times. But I remember, having, cassettes like Nazareth was one of them. Remember Nazareth with Hair of the
of
Dog, stuff like that.
Hair
It was
of the Dog.
good times, and those are times that the youth of today. Because I actually mentioned to one of the younger people that I know, I mentioned a record player, and they gave me the most blank look you will ever see in your life. What's that?
Yeah, there's a small subsection, a bunch of little hipsters running around who are into vinyl, but they would never say record player. They would call it a turntable.
Yes. Now it's a turntable, not a record player. It's a turntable. But hey, it is the times, and they are changing. But I gotta ask, Eric, what's going on over at the Yay Old Twitter feed?
Oh my, America's Most Haunted. And you can get there. You can follow along, and I encourage you to do so, my friends. Just get on Twitter, whether you're a member or not. You can just go to Twitter and then do a search for AM Haunted, at AM Haunted. And, of course, I encourage you to follow our account and interact, Write back to me. I'll be happy to
show
talk
some
to
love.
You, like it. Jump up and down, wave your arms. I am not hard to get a hold of. I am happy to interact with you. So yeah, basically we cover kind of the paranormal spectrum. We cover paranormal news, cover media, paranormal media, so TV and film, whatever's going on. And another fairy sighting. I don't know what they're doing over in the UK, man, but these guys spot fairies and they're serious about it.
They are very serious.
Time. So we got a picture up of a flying fairy. It is almost certainly a mayfly because it's the mayfly time of year over there.
Yeah.
Or I guess everywhere. And the photographer happened to catch one from the right angle, so it makes it look big, makes it look like it has legs.
I'm looking at this. It's weird. It's a weird picture.
It looks like a fairy. It really does, from that angle. But it's almost certainly just a plain old mayfly. But it's a cool picture.
It kind of is. His flash was definitely pretty bright.
Very bright, yes. And how do you make the tiny little mayfly look that big? I'm not sure. Must be the angle. Speaking of pictures, as we have discussed more than once, neither one of us put a whole lot of stock in orbs. Orbs
they're dirt.
They're almost always dirt, or they're bugs, or they're moisture. I mean, they can be anything almost, just a reflection, lens flare. It could be anything. I'm not saying 100% all time of orbs can be explained in natural terms. I'm not saying that, but something close to that can be, I think. Anyway, so I almost never do anything bother with orbs, but this one orb video that interestingly takes place, it's the usual closed-circuit TV, and it's from the Space Walk of Fame Museum in Florida. And there's just this big, dumb, galumphing orb that just cruises around the room. I'm just a big old orb.
Yeah.
I'm here at the museum.
I'm here.
Yeah, there I go. So I got a screenshot of it, but if you click through, you can watch the video, and I don't know what it is, but I'm assuming it's probably something natural. Speaking of natural phenomena, only twice this year. Have you heard about this Manhattan Henge phenomena?
I have heard something about it. I haven't had a real lot of time to look into it, but it's odd.
All it is the way the buildings and the streets are aligned. New York, or Manhattan anyway, was a planned city. So basically the streets all run north, south, east, west, right?
Yeah.
Like DC. And so basically, you're having nice long open channels where the streets are, okay? So this year, it's only twice this year, and tomorrow is when the first one happens. Tomorrow, the alignment of the sun with these long, narrow, open passageways creates these very striking visuals of the sun going down between all the high-rises. And you can see it, all up and down these thoroughfares.
They planned it that way.
Yeah, they may have. They really may have. So if you click through on that, you can see various photos from last year and what they're anticipating for tomorrow. And it's cool. And they're calling it Henge, of course, because it's the alignment.
Sure.
So it's like Stonehenge. But it's an interesting, I do remember last year. It was pretty spectacular. All right, so think about this. 3.3 billion years ago. We think of the Earth as being, kind of more or less the way it is now. sure, we know about continental drift
Yeah.
and the continents have shifted and all that stuff, but we still think of it as, fairly similar world.
You would think it would be.
But it was not. Check this out. 3.3 billion years ago, over a period of about 100 million years, there were so many and such large asteroid impacts that it was a total wipeout. It was another one of these
Dinosaurs gone kind of thing, yeah.
This is 3.3 billion, so it was before. There weren't a whole lot of creatures alive 3.3 billion years ago. But the only ones that survived were the ones that what they call extremophiles, the ones that like really, really, really hot.
Like extreme survivors. The extremophiles, check them
They are
out.
extremophiles. Like they're down at the vents, the volcanic vents down at the bottom of the ocean where
Yeah.
it's really damn hot. So anyway, 3.3 billion years ago, there were such large asteroids impacting the Earth, and there were so many of them that for extended periods of time, the oceans boiled.
Really?
Think of that.
Interesting.
Think of looking out to the Pacific Ocean or the Atlantic, whatever, and seeing it boil. It's so hot.
Wow, I would definitely think that you're not going swimming that day. Snorkeling maybe out.
Maybe toss some lobsters in there for dinner.
Yeah, sure. You can cook things really easily.
But I'll tell you, so think how odd that was. And the air temperature, they said for weeks on end, would go as high as 1,000 degrees.
Wow. Wow,
So-
I had no idea that we had such... Now, we complain about global warming now. Can you imagine 1,000 degrees?
It's
We'd be dead.
inconceivable.
We'd be
It's
dead.
10 times more, or nearly 10 times more, 8 times more maybe, higher than we ever get now. So, I mean, yeah, it's pretty hard to imagine. And so the air is 1,000 degrees.
The water's boiling.
Seas
Yeah, good
are
times.
boiling. That is crazy. Go nuts, my friend. All right, so I'm sure you've heard about all these different zombie
I have. They're everywhere.
games, right? There's all kinds of different games, and a lot of
Yes.
it's an obstacle course, or it's a kind of a glorified tag situation, and they go
Uh-huh.
city to city, and they're all over the place. All right, so one side of it, of course, are the people, quote unquote, the humans, the participants, but you got to have zombies, right?
Yep.
So not everyone knows how to behave properly like a zombie. So there's now zombie school.
Oh, you know, I thought zombies were cool before they went mainstream like they are now. You know?
They're
It's
pretty
just-
cliche.
It's just, now it's just been like, okay, all right, enough with the zombies. We get it. Zombies are cool. Can we please move on now? With this,
Yeah.
people as zombies. But yeah, why would you need to go to school to learn to be a zombie?
Well, the proper leg dragging.
Why, have you been to Walmart? Most of those people wandering the hall or the aisles look a lot like zombies to me.
I agree. Or just watch The Walking Dead.
Yeah. Talk to George Romero. He'll tell you exactly how to do it.
Plenty of zombie instructions. All right, we talked about this Charlie challenge thing.
Yeah.
And
going on
so
with
a
that
bunch
thing?
of dumb teens, it's the big social network viral. It's the latest fad. So a bunch
It's
of
the new
teens.
it's the new Slender Man, basically.
It is. I think you're right. It's exactly that. And they are summoning this, in theory, this Mexican demon, right? So all of a sudden, and people have been making light of it, as probably well they should, because it's just a dumb thing. And, when you see the homemade indicator, the Ouija, the equivalent of the Ouija indicator, they just use 2 pencils and create a
Real
quadrant.
real high tech.
2 yeses and 2 nos. Wow, that's exciting.
Yeah.
But anyway, this guy is claiming, and you can see the picture if you go to @AMHaunted on Twitter. And it is a pretty frightening picture of this guy's back.
Yeah, it's all ripped up.
All ripped up, all scratched up, and he's claiming it happened immediately after he did the Charlie challenge.
Now, do you know any teens are doing this Charlie challenge?
Well, my daughter's class, and I think she said it was social studies, they actually did it in class, in school, a public high school.
I can't believe a teacher let that go down.
I I need to press her more on the details, and that's part of what's been so crazy in our lives is this is the last week. In fact, tonight is the last night of rehearsals before both my younger kids, the 15-year-old daughter and 11-year-old boy, are in a play that premieres tomorrow night. So they've been in 3-hour dress rehearsals all week long, every night. So I haven't seen a whole lot of them. But she did come home from school and say, hey, do you know anything about the Charlie Charlie Challenge? I said, yeah, I saw something about it. I saw it was trending on Twitter. I haven't really looked into it. She says, well, we did it in our class.
Well, if anyone out there is doing the Charlie Challenge, any listeners, feel free next week. Give it a try throughout the week. Call us on Tuesday. Let us know how the Charlie Challenge happened and what happened. What'd you see?
Here, any response at all? Because this was the first I had heard that anything had ever happened in any way. It's just been a game.
It's the new Bloody Mary. It's the new Bloody Mary.
It's a combo of Bloody Mary and the Ouija board.
Yeah, so they're not really doing anything new. They're just adding something together.
Nothing remotely new. You're right. It's.
Oh, by the way, speaking of paranormal, I went and saw the movie Poltergeist.
Ooh, the remake.
The remake. It wasn't bad. It was all right. As far as remakes go, because I'm pretty anti-remake, to be honest with you.
Yeah, but most people are.
But this remake it had some elements. They paid a lot of homage to the old film. It was not anywhere near as good as acted. But it would be hard to beat, Craig T. Nelson and the cast that they had in the original.
Jo Beth Williams, man, I had a crush on her.
Wasn't she a cutie back in those days?
She was.
She was hot.
She was a MILF. Let's face it.
A MILF, yes. She could be qualified now. She'd be the other thing. The what do they call it now? GILF. She'd be that. So now we're going. Yeah, I'm staying away from what that means, but I'm just saying.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. She'd be at least that. Maybe a GG Gil, a GILF.
But anyhow, I saw the movie, and of course, it has a whole new cast, and obviously it's not me, Craig T. Nelson reprising
pretty
the role.
Similar storyline, though. Isn't it?
Very similar, except the dad's out of work, and they buy this house. How this guy's buying this $1 million home, basically, or whatever high-end home, when he doesn't have any kind of income is odd to me. How they didn't even work that into the story hardly. Of how they're affording this big home. And then, of course, they take the clown element's still in it. The tree element is still in it. At the end of the day, it's a very similar story, but I gotta say, stacking side by side the two of them, and of course, it's hard. Everyone always says the original is better, but in this case, it truly is better, the original.
Yeah, I've read quite a few reviews, and they've ranged from about what you said, which was, it was pretty good, it wasn't bad. Had some good scares. It was reasonably well done.
A lot of jump scares.
But by comparison, and you kind of have to make a comparison. I guess you could get away with not, but it is so similar. It really is a remake. This is not a reimagining.
No,
all they did was take basically the same story and update it.
That's all they did. They put the elements of people being out of work, of course, the recession, stuff like that. It was nothing. I was expecting an update, of course. The acting was nowhere near as strong as the original. The scares were primarily jump scares. A lot of CGI was used, where Spielberg, back in those days, didn't have CGI. So, and he was able to pull off all of his stuff the old-fashioned way, the old movie magic way.
Practical effects.
Exactly. Now it's so CGI. Everything's so CGI now. It takes a lot of the fun out of the movie because you can just tell, oh yeah, that's computer generated. Yay.
Exactly.
And so it kind of sanitizes it to that point.
There's been a handful of exceptions to that rule, like Gollum, for example, is pretty amazing.
Yes.
But remember, the way he was made, it's that using that Robert Zemeckis technique where there's still an actor doing all those things.
Yeah, which is cool because it's still a human element.
Exactly. They're just tracking a human being's movements. And it's the same way they did the Polar Express, and it's the same way they did the Jim Carrey Christmas Carol. And So people, there's real actors acting out all those scenes. They just they're wearing those sensors.
Yeah, exactly.
And the computer picks it up and then animates it from there.
Overall, I'd give it probably 3 out of 5 stars. I mean,
that's
mediocre.
not bad. I like Sam Rockwell, the guy who plays the dad. I've always liked him, or almost always. He's someone I like.
Well, and I saw it in 3D as well. And they made really good use of the 3D.
I have heard that. I have heard that that's worth. This is one movie that's worth seeing in 3D.
Yeah, they actually thought about it while they're filming for 3D effect. I mean,
exactly.
And so that was nice.
That's what you need.
Yeah, exactly. But we got a good show for everyone on tap tonight. Who do we got tonight, Eric?
I am very, very excited about this because among my many other majors, not many, but a handful, I was a philosophy major. And we have a philosophy professor, Tim Weldon, who is also an author, and his brand new book, and it literally just came out a week ago, is called Haunted Beauty. And he looks into the aesthetics and the philosophy and the cultural underlying aspects of ghost stories, the really good ones, the literary ones, the Shakespearean, the Poe, the ones that you know from real literature.
Sure.
And so he analyzes those, and so we're going to talk about that, and then we're just going to also branch out and just talk about the relationship between philosophy and the paranormal in general, because there are a lot of intersections, and they have a lot more in common. They inform each other a lot more than may seem obvious. So I am very excited.
It'll be really, really interesting. But we're running late for break, guys. We come back, Professor Tim Weldon. Don't go anywhere. See you right after the break.
Patients can't afford a place to stay when the best treatment is far from home. A room shouldn't be the difference between life and death. Let's make sure that everyone who needs a room gets one. Let's make some noise. Let's help the American Cancer Society finish the fight.
Text ROOM to 41518 to donate $10.
Hi, Tom Bodette. If pop culture is to be believed, roughly 40% of all people are actually vampires, or dating one. Well, undead or not, you can always save on a clean, comfortable room at Motel 6, even if you sleep during the day because direct sunlight turns you into a pile of sparkly coffee grounds. Speaking of which, we have free coffee every morning. You day sleepers may want to go for the decaf. I'm Tom Bodette, and we'll leave the light on for you. Book online at motel6.com.
It's Thursday night, and you're grabbing drinks with some friends. Started off with a pitcher for the table, which quickly becomes 2. There's pool. And there's the photo booth.
All right, everybody squeeze in. Say cheese!
Followed naturally by an order of wings. And another.
Can we get some extra ranch sauce?
Then there's the ceremonial nightcap.
So what are we doing this weekend?
And lastly, it's back to the car, which, if you're buzzed, could be the most expensive night of your life. Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Northern Tool and Equipment.
I got a rather serious problem over here.
All right, what are we looking at?
Cranky mother-in-law asleep on the couch in the man cave.
Dear God.
It gets worse.
That's impossible.
She's passed out on the remote.
I stand corrected.
But what do I do?
Okay, I want you to grab a Torrent Big Red hydraulic bottle jack.
Okay.
Now you wedge that bad boy in under your mother-in-law and crank her up skyward.
It's working. And got the remote.
Great. Now grab that Torrent Big Red 2-ton folding shop crane and put that woman on wheels.
And away we go.
There's no problem a little horsepower can't solve. Northern Tool and Equipment.
It's your ideas, work, and creativity that make it your yard. At Ace, we're here to help with hoses and sprinklers to nurture growth, gardening tools for the shape of good things to come, even the right fertilizer and bug killers to make the grass a little greener. You'll find it all now at Ace, your place, with everything you need for your yard, plus helpful advice, almost like we're right there. Ace,
the helpful place.
Only in the forest can you see this. But nothing beats the moment you see that.
Cool!
That's your child's eyes opening up to a world of possibilities.
There are some moments only the forest can inspire. Find yours at discovertheforest.org. Learn about forests near you and discover cool things to do when you go. And you might just see this. Visit discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Do you have a question for our guest tonight? Don't feel like calling the show? Not a problem. Email those questions to afterhoursam@gmail.com. Again, that's afterhoursam@gmail.com. We are back, coming right back at you. This is Joel Sturgis, and as always,
Eric Olson.
And who do we got on tap tonight, Eric?
Well, I'm telling you, we are going to discuss philosophy and the paranormal and the culture, history, and aesthetics of ghost stories with Dr. Timothy Weldon, professor of philosophy and chair of the Department of Theology and Philosophy at the University of St. Francis in Joliet, Illinois, home of the Blues Brothers.
That's right.
And his brand new book, just out a week, is called Haunted Beauty. Welcome to the show, Professor Weldon.
Hey, evening, Joel. Evening, Eric. Thanks for having me. I'd love to be here.
Hey, not a problem. We're happy to have you. Now, how does a nice guy like you get tied up into subject matter like this?
Well, philosophy is about metaphysics, which really, and I love words and tearing them apart because every word is a treasure trove in itself. And if you look at the word metaphysics, right, beyond, and then physics, nature, beyond nature. Hey, we're home when we're talking about ghosts.
Yeah, we really are. Well, especially philosophy, like you said, it's such a. I find philosophy to be a really, in some ways, difficult subject matter. An easy subject matter. It can go either way, and like philosophy, like Eric did some philosophy work, and he's tried to impart some wisdom to me through philosophy, and I'm like, that's a whole lot of thinking, buddy. That's a lot of thinking going on there.
A lot of thinking, sometimes too much thinking, right, Joel? I mean, Oscar Wilde, the Irish playwright, said it best. Some things in life just can't be taught. And I wonder, after teaching philosophy for almost 25 years now, if that applies to philosophy, except I think we become more philosophical and our thoughts deepen as we get older. It's just something natural. We've seen, the bright side of life. We've kind of dealt with some suffering, some more than others. And our thoughts tend to just kind of wade out in the deep end a little more.
Is that where with age comes wisdom?
I would hope, because the opposite, right, Joe, there's no fool like an old fool.
That is true. And God doesn't look out for those ones anymore. He's like, screw you, buddy. You've had a lifetime to figure things out.
Oh, yeah, you're with your thumb out on the side of the road at some time.
Exactly. But, Eric, now, like I kind of threw Eric under the bus with his philosophy background. Eric, what do you think about it having a philosophy background? You agree, don't you, with the good doctor?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that there's a clear relationship. Well, first of all, philosophy applies to everything because it really is the big topics. What is the meaning of reality? What is real? What is true? How do we know what we know? How do we know that what we know is true? And then just the very, very simple, or it's not simple, but it's not complicated. logical thinking. We need to everyone can benefit from learning to think clearly and to be able to go from one idea to another in a clear and simple manner. Now, I'm not geared toward math. I am not really particularly good at math. I was fine at lower math, at arithmetic. Did not really catch on very well once I got deeper into algebra, so I am not a mathematical thinker really, but philosophy for some reason, and doing the logic side of it, I was able to grasp, and even when you abstract it out, I was able to kind of figure out where that was going and realize the importance of being able to chart out your mode of thinking. So all of those things come under the very broad, very, very broad heading of philosophy. Philosophy is so broad that all learning used to be considered within philosophy. And natural philosophy was what we would now call, what would we now call natural?
Yeah.
You know,
No, Eric, you're exactly right. Natural philosophy is what we now call science and technology.
Yes.
So the fact is, yes. I mean, if we can apply philosophy and the tools of philosophy to something that's relatively subjective, like the paranormal, I think that helps us to kind of tease out the aspects of it that are the most realistic, that are the most believable, and then we can go from there. So that's my view of it.
No, you're exactly right here, because philosophy is capable, as the first and last subject of the university, it's capable of asking the big questions. And it's capable of asking the big questions because it looks at big things like the meaning of life. And when you're talking about the paranormal, you're talking about, I mean, we're really getting into someone who wrote about ghosts, because his most famous play was about a ghost, Shakespeare. Remember when he says, in Hamlet, there are more things in heaven and earth, a ratio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. And he was, by philosophy, he meant general learning. But people who study philosophy, I know, Eric, it was one of your majors. I mean, we get that there's something else out there, certainly.
Oh yeah, and I really believe that. I really, really agree with you. But I got to ask you: do you yourself, though, believe in ghosts?
That is that's the $64,000 question. I think that the greatest ghostwriter to date was a medieval scholar. He was a former provost at Eton and King's College, Cambridge. His name was M.R. James, and he died in 1936. And, someone asked him that question, Joel, and he responded this way: do I believe in ghosts? To which I am prepared to consider the evidence and accept it if it satisfies me. And I'm right in line with him. I mean, I'd love to think, and that's why I wrote this book, ghost stories are fun. I have three young boys. And, the reason I wrote this book is because, I didn't have the time to wade out into the deep end as yet, but I wanted to do something fun and at the same time something philosophical and something that I liked, in fact loved, and that was ghost stories. So around Halloween 2 years ago, I got an idea to write this book, and I did. But that doesn't mean that I'm not open to things when I say no. I mean, Louis C. Jones, who wrote an excellent book called Things That Go Bump in the Night, used to tell his students to go home and just kind of gather information on oral tradition about ghosts. And he never believed in ghosts. In fact, he was a lot more skeptical than I was. I'm the type of guy that'll get out there with the 1 megawatt flashlight and go out to the graveyard with you, just for the fun of it.
Yeah, check it all out and get some first-hand experiences. Because, I mean, really, you can look at evidence all day, but until it actually happens to you or you really feel something's going on, it means nothing until you, that whole philosophy, when you kind of fall into it, where you immerse yourself into it.
Yeah, and anyone who's studied, anyone who's been to high school, college, etc., what we're looking for, in life is evidence, because we're all kind of seeking the truth in whatever subject we study, and that especially applies to ghosts. I mean, you have all these ghost hunting. You have all these ghost hunting shows and all this that's out there with the latest and the greatest in tech and all their equipment. But until they get someone to just show up and say, "Yeah, I'm a ghost. What do you want to know?"
yeah. Do a dance.
I'm not saying anything. And this is why I wrote the book too. It's what Edith Wharton, the great short story writer, once said. It's the fun of the shutter. we love this stuff. And it's fun. It's fun for grown-ups. I call it bungee jumping for the mind. You know, because you get out there, and if you're dealing with ghosts and the possibility, I think it's more fun than anything else.
Oh, I think so too. I think it's the what if factor. What if they do really exist? I mean, you know, look at Edgar Allan Poe. I mean, the things that he wrote about ghosts, Telltale Heart, and other, you know, The Raven. I mean, the guy was deeply involved, or at least I would believe, deeply involved in the paranormal, and that was another philosopher. Yeah,
another great thinker. That's excellent. Yeats, the great Irish author. You know, T.S. Eliot said that there's just one thing that bothers this guy more than literature itself, and that's trying to prove whether or not they're ghosts. I mean, after all, he wrote 58 short stories about ghosts, and he wasn't the only one. If you look at Hamlet, Joseph Conrad, Thomas Hardy. And they're just making movies about him. And we go on and on about this, but they wrote ghost stories.
So before we kind of broaden out to the more general topic of philosophy and the applications of philosophy to the paranormal, let's talk specifically about the book, Haunted Beauty. So why don't you walk us through it a little bit and give us a feel for it and the structure of it and exactly what you were trying to accomplish.
Right. I wanted to show how, when we're talking about ghosts and ghost stories, and after all, it's one of the greatest of running themes and most durable of running themes of all literature the world over, but especially Western literature. I mean, ghost stories have been around since Homer and before, so we're talking in excess of 2,500 years here. And I asked myself, why the appeal? And I think the appeal, Joel and Eric, is an aesthetic one, that we love the atmosphere and the situation more than the find itself. In other words, you know, the French philosopher Pascal said, we always prefer the hunt to the capture. And I think that applies to ghost stories as well. We like the chills and the thrills. We love, you know, the crisp fall air. And I wanted to tie that to the ghost story itself. So that was my objective, and I think I accomplished it, because I talk about aesthetics, but I also talk about the psychological aspect of atmosphere as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, some writers, and most of the great ones, they were the master of the atmosphere. They would set the atmosphere before they'd start really telling the story. And that was always the hook, the atmosphere first.
Absolutely, it's lure and lead, as it put. That's a great point, Joel. I mean, he died in 2006, and he was the kind of I'd say supernatural writer, and his name was Charles Grant, and he won numerous sci-fi awards, or I should say awards in supernatural fiction, and he was prolific, but no one introduced the story better than he did. And I just read just about everything he wrote, especially in college and graduate school, and it always carried with me that, you know, there's something to this, that you may not believe in ghosts. Ghosts may not even be real, so we have to throw that out there as well, but we like to think that they could be, and we like everything that surrounds them, from the cold room to the vaporous mist that could be them or could not be.
Well, you know, the thing of it is that they are real, at the very least, in literature.
Yes, that is a very good point. I mean, for them, just the subtext there is a ghost, in other words, is presumed real, I should say, or else they wouldn't write the story itself. And that's, Eric, to get back to your question, that's first. You know, I lead into my narrative here. Haunted Beauty is the name of the book, talking about ghost itself and how difficult a concept is it just in defining what the word ghost means. I mean, if you look at the Oxford, you know, English dictionary and you try and get a grasp on the word ghost, it's as difficult as trying to get a grasp on the word haunt. Mm-hmm. And they're both very long in their definition, but they give us no true, I think, definitive walkaway with an understanding of what a ghost is. I mean, knowing that something is the immaterial part of the person is just not enough.
Yes.
And then if you go, for example, because I think we always have to engage common culture, and I lead into this as well, if you go to like the default cyber encyclopedia for all the world now, Google, they have 95 million results just for the word ghost.
Oh, jeez. That's that's a little bit daunting right there to get that all figured out. Ghosts are one of those human conditions, or the afterlife, I should say, is one of those human conditions we're all going to face. And do you think that that's why it plays such a huge part in philosophy?
That's a great point. I think that's incisive insight there, because Stanley Kubrick, we all know what he did. He said that, just thinking about ghosts promises, in his words, he said this, a shape beyond self. And we want that. We want to know that, look, when you're dead, you're not done. That the ultimate thing I have to look for is not a dirt nap, but it's something that's far beyond that.
Yeah, we want to have that insurance saying that once we leave here, we will continue on in some way, shape, or form. And of course, that's plagued mankind since the dawn of time, like we just discussed. I mean, that same question. Where do we go when we die? And it's been great, fuel for stories. It's been great fuel for movies, and even to this day, we cannot pass up a really good ghost story. And even as sophisticated as we think we are, a good campfire story always gets us.
It gets at whatever age too. I mean, we love it when we're young, but we also love it when we're older. How many of us, really participate in Halloween? After all, it's next to Christmas, it's the most participative holiday, and the holiday we spend, again, second to Christmas, spend most on in the United States. I mean, I love, like I said, I love taking the small kids. If I'm looking for something to do in mid-August, hey, just take them to, you just take them to Home Improvement store, and they've already got some pumpkins or ghosts and vampires up. They'll walk down that aisle for a good half hour.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Fun.
Pushing the buttons on the Casper. Heck yeah. I mean, that's, but Halloween is, like you said, the second biggest holiday behind Christmas, and it captures my imagination every year. I can't help but to dress up.
Right, or at least celebrate. I mean, who's not going to watch at least one Dracula movie during October or do something like that? You'd be the ultimate party pooper if you wouldn't. Yeah. Or even people who don't believe in this stuff or don't want to engage, they still give out candy, and you see that all the time. But, talking about ghosts and ghost stories, and this is why I wanted to kind of bring this home, the older we get, the more logical we get, or the more we have to rely on logic and hopefully healthy reasoning more than anything else. We know as well that a ghost story is a very difficult thing in terms of adult fiction. Mm-hmm. Roald Dahl, who was author of so many children's books, he was in the 1950s. Roald Dahl was commissioned, this author by a television producer, to find 24 good ghost stories to rack up a year of good TV in the UK. And he set upon this project. He thought it would only take him weeks. It took him months. And he combed over 700 stories just to find 24 good ones. And he didn't even think they were that good, but they were just better than what was out there, because it came to dawn on him that, trying to convince adults, thinking adults, and people who are used to, sports and politics and whatever, trying to convince them that, mm-hmm. or persuade them that ghosts could exist is a very difficult thing to do. And that's what I guess my book ties into. We do it with aesthetic. We do it by surrounding the narrative of ghost story in beautiful things. I mean, we love to think of night, and in the 17th century, a thinker once said that, night and night, fate, and love made life, and that's true. But there's something about night that has a solemnity to it that we really appreciate it, and all the more we appreciate dusk, where night and day meet, and the aesthetics of it, and that kind of opens the door to ghosts and ghost stories.
Oh, it sure does. I think part of night is because it's the unexplained in the night. What are we going to encounter?
Right, and for so many years, I mean, we have to look for over 90% of human history without artificial light, right? I mean, what must the night have meant to someone who had to live by candlelight for 8 hours a day, 12 hours a day?
Danger. It meant danger.
Yeah,
is really what it meant.
And if not danger, maybe the potential thereof.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I mean, if you had to go outside with the only thing lighting your way, instead of these million candle power, flashlights we have now, what if all you had was the torch, was an actual fire torch?
Exactly. That's a great great point, because at night our chief sense is taken from us, the visual. But I think this plays a lot into ghost stories and ghost hunting and everything else, and that's our aural senses. Hearing is as important at night than seeing, because your seeing's stifled. So you have to rely on hearing at least as much. And notice, how hearing kind of tricks us from time to time. Hey, what's that noise on the roof? Well, it's just the neighbor's cat. Well, what if it's not? Or it's just the wind or something. It may not be.
It very well might be our instincts kicking in to survive at that point. What is that? Do I need to be scared of it?
And I'm very thankful for media, for modern media, to bring sound into the horror genre. I mean, if you look at Mike Oldfield's use of the tubular bells in the 1973 movie The Exorcist, I mean, who can forget that theme? Or, heck, I'm into my fifth decade here. I look into, I can go far back as, Rod Sermon's The Night Gallery.
Oh, great show.
Great
show.
Man, that theme to that, if that doesn't scare you, nothing will.
Yeah, in fact, to this day, shows like the original Twilight Zone are still scaring people.
Yes, and it's the black and white versions.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, so that speaks to the storytelling and, again, the philosophy end of it. How they're able to weave these stories. And a lot of these are also morality tales.
They are. They're kind of like, no, not kind of like, they are. Exactly what you said. Watch out. In other words, beware of malevolent motives. Don't transgress too far out into scientific thinking. I mean, that's what Frankenstein was all about. I mean, beware the scientists. There was an academic conference at Notre Dame University some years ago, maybe a decade ago, and the theme was Fear Frankenstein. In other words, will science and technology merge and mean a world that will scare us in what it portends.
And really, Frankenstein was the victim.
Yes, right. I mean, after all, the monster didn't create himself.
No, it wasn't his fault. Hey, I wanted to just toss in a couple things before we get too far. I wanted to so completely agree with you, Tim, about, ultimately, what is the appeal of this kind of thinking, these kinds of atmospheres, these kinds of stories, just everything we're talking about, Halloween. And for me, it's one word, and it's exactly in line with what you were saying. For me, it's all about the spooky. I don't want to be terrorized. I don't want to see super gross things. I don't like gruesome things. I don't like a bunch of gore. I like spooky. I like the atmosphere. I like that feeling. I like that sensation. And that's what draws me into this whole area. And ultimately, that's what I get out of it. That's the aesthetic appeal. I love art that reflects the spooky. I don't want it to be too gory. I don't want it to be too gross. They talk about dark art. Well, the ones I like are the ones that have a sense of wonder to them and a sense of the sublime, which I know is something you've looked into, and are spooky. That's what I want. I like the implication.
No, that's great, Eric. It's that psychological import that draws us, and that's why fine literature written by people like an M.R. James or Sheridan Le Fanu or just, and they keep going, maybe even a Charles Grant, but they avoid the gore, they avoid the slash and dash, they avoid the scream queens, because it's got a kind of this I think it has a bloodlust there that is repugnant, especially after a while, and we need less of it. We need more of that kind of psychological discomfort. I mean, we have the English word shiver. The French have a word frisson, which literally means that you're kind of psychologically discomforted in a sense, but it's a pleasant tingle more than anything else, because you're right here. It's a challenge to the mind, and a challenge that revolves around two words: what if?
Exactly. I mean, you can have all the Jason Voorhees and the Michael Myers. Yeah, that's good for a jump scare, but a good old-fashioned Alfred Hitchcock, that's way scarier to me.
Yeah, it's the subtle unseen that we appreciate more than anything else. A horror writer once said that his favorite movie was The Haunting of Hill House, and not because it had any ghosts to it, is because throughout the whole movie they had this build-up that there could be ghosts. And at the end they have this door that's pushing outward, and you can't see what's behind the door, but just imagining what could be behind the door that's strong enough to push a door towards you, that's enough to make the movie.
The psychological element, but we got to run a break, everybody. We come back, more Tim Weldon right after this, and more philosophy about ghosts, paranormal, and all those things that scare us deep down inside.
Green light. Hey girl, school zone. I'm getting hungry. Car changing lanes. You want to meet me for pizza? Stop sign. Intersection clear. Yeah, street. Pizza sounds good. Ballin Street? Girlin Street!
It's hard to concentrate on two things at once, like texting and driving. Stop the text, stop the wrecks. How will you stop texting and driving? Tell us at stoptextstopwrecks.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Northern Tool and Equipment.
So me and the boys head out to tailgate today and find some other fans in our spot.
Well, it happens.
Cheering for the wrong team.
Oh, this is war.
Even worse, they've got this couch set up and everything.
A couch?
Yeah, it's sectional.
All right, first thing, don't ever use the word sectional again.
Done.
Second, I want you to grab a 4,700-pound tow chain with J-hook and grab hammer. Throw that on the back of your truck.
Got it.
Now you're going to Hail Mary the J-hook over the end of that couch. Time to find a better spot for your new friends.
That should do it.
There's no problem a little horsepower can't solve. Northern Tool and Equipment.
Hello, and welcome to today's lottery drawing. Good luck. And here's today's winning numbers. First one up, it's not yours. Second one, not yours. And another number that's not yours. Okay, this is one number that's yours. It's a 5, but you don't get any money for that. And the final number is not yours.
Yep, so chances are you're not going to hit the lottery anytime soon. Don't get us wrong, the lottery can be fun every now and then. Just please don't rely on it for your future savings. How about this? Brew your own coffee at home instead of buying that latte every day. Brown bag it to work instead of ordering in. Ride your bike instead of buying all that gas. These changes alone can save you thousands a year. Thousands. Small changes today, big bucks tomorrow. Feed that piggy bank. Go to feedthepig.org for more free ideas on how to save. .org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
America's Most Haunted, The Secrets of Famous Paranormal Places is now an epic book from Berkeley Penguin. History, legends, investigations, interviews, and profiles of America's 10 most haunted hotspots by Eric Olson and haunted housewife Teresa Argy. Be sure to join us on Twitter and Facebook at AM Haunted, Pinterest at America's Most Haunted, and our website, americas-most-haunted.com. And here every week on America's Most Haunted Radio with all the top names in the paranormal field.
Do you have a question for our guest tonight? Don't feel like calling the show? Not a problem. Email those questions to afterhoursam@gmail.com. Again, that's afterhoursam@gmail.com. Coming right back at you. That's right, After Hours AM. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me, as always,
Eric Olson.
Eric C. Olson, Eric Olson, Eric that guy, whatever. You change it up once in a while. So I was waiting for the new change, but that's all right. Eric Olson is with
All right,
me.
next time I'll be Eric Christopher Olson.
Eric Olson is in the building. And tonight we are talking to Professor Tim Weldon, and he has written really a fantastic book. And I encourage everybody to check out the really cool Haunted Beauty. I mean, it's a cool book.
Thank you, guys.
I mean, really, you kind of take the whole philosophy and you turn it in a way onto its paranormal head. You know, and that's really good to read. It's really refreshing, that kind of take on it.
because I think we need that fresh thinking. When and I'm not saying that I'm giving us that necessarily, but I attempted to, because we get stuck in that rut, and I think with infotainment so much, and this is the beauty of radio that was able to not only survive TV and internet but thrive in spite of it. I mean, there's something about radio that's different, especially when that goes hand in hand with the paranormal. See, that TV really doesn't, because radio fully engages the mind's eye and the imagination, and that makes paranormal all the more fun.
It's the theater of the mind.
That's it. Imagination theater, man.
It's, and that's why, like, something like the War of the Worlds worked so well way back when, because it really played on people's imagination.
Right. Why would Pennsylvania offer to send National Guard troops to New Jersey? That's how strong an influence Orson Welles was that night. People supposedly, scores of thousands bought into it rather than the hundreds of thousands of listeners, but still that was enough.
Well, yeah, but he even had disclaimers during the show.
Yeah, I mean, he warned them.
This is not real, guys.
He did warn them, but I think he warned them, but at the same time, and that's great, at the same time, he had people who sounded like, he brought in someone who sounded like FDR as one of the characters, and he had people who sounded kind of official. So he warned them, but if you came in mid-show, you could see where the gullible would buy it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, instead of stopping for a second, going, wait a minute, this is Mercury Theater. This is not real.
What happened to the Charlie McCarthy show, right? I tune in for the Shadow when I get Martians.
Yeah, and they're landing and they're coming after us. Martha, get my shotgun. Oh my gosh, I will defend us. No, I've read some accounts of people that actually fell for that whole thing. There were actually people in the streets with guns, believe it or not.
Right, and they still don't know. Yeah, they still don't know if this is true, but someone shot at a water tower thinking it's the Martian. There's a brand new 2015 book out on this, by the way. I forget the title, boy, but I'll send it to you by email for sure, because that is one of the episodes that I like, because Eric is exactly right. At the end of the broadcast, he says explicitly, look, this is a Halloween prank. Happy Halloween.
Exactly, and that's what's funny. I shouldn't say
People
funny.
Didn't believe. They'd much rather believe the falsehood than, and that whole image conjured up, this whole theater of the mind, rather than the reality of it. The reality sort of undermined their vision, and the vision was more important than the reality. Speaking of the theater of the mind, are you guys familiar? There's a just classic Stan Freberg, I think it's on a record, must be, audio recording where he's demonstrating the power of radio versus TV, and he's building this enormous, like the size of a city block, sundae, ice cream sundae. All right, bring in the helicopter.
Yeah, yep.
Put the cherry on top. Bring in the helicopter. All right, good. Drop it. So it really is a hilarious but also very effective demonstration of the power of the theater of the mind. Hey, back to Haunted Beauty itself. I'd love to hear some examples. I mean, obviously, to start with one, just give us an example of one of the stories that you analyze, and just kind of walk us through it, and tell us what you figured out about it.
Well, one of the stories I look at and was from Charles Grant, and he's trying to open up a story about the supernatural, let's put it this way, or I'll just go to M.R. James real quick, because I found it here on page 52, and this is a scene from Canon Albrecht's scrapbook, and he provides multiple examples here where there's an influence or a confluence between a religious type thinking, or thinking of the supernatural, and the theological. It was nearly 5 o'clock, I read here from Canon Albrecht's. It was nearly 5 o'clock, the short day was drawing in, and the church began to fill with shadows, while curious noises, The muffled footfalls and distant talking voices that had been perceptible all day seemed, no doubt, because of their fading light and the consequently quickened sense of hearing, to become more frequent and insistent. The sacristan began for the first time to show signs of hurry and impatience. He heaved a sigh of relief when camera and notebook were finally packed and stowed away, and horribly beckoned Dennison to the western door of the church. Under the tower, it was time to ring the Angelus. A few pulls of the reluctant rope, and the great bell, Bertrand, high in the tower, began to speak, and swung her voice up among the pines, down into the valleys, loud with mountain streams, calling the dwellers on those lonely hills to remember and repeat the salvation of the angel to her whom he called blessed among women. With that, a profound quiet seemed to fall for the first time that day upon the little town. And I talk about this kind of enmeshing of all the sentiment that we have of what night brings, and how night brings, and I'll use this word, a deepening or a solemnity to our lives. And there is a tie to the religious into that as well, because when we look at certain religions, if we look at the Judeo-Christian tradition, the vigil mass is very important. That when people are going tonight, or that sundown becomes a little more religious for us, or a time that is more religious than, say, mass or church or service or synagogue during the day.
Well, look at the just to interject. Look at the most for me anyway, and in my family and people I talk to, the most popular service, church service of the entire year is that candlelight Christmas Eve service.
Oh, by far.
So it's 11 o'clock. Coming up, bumping up on midnight, and they turn out all the lights and light those candles and pass them all around. It is utterly magic, and it works every time.
You're right, Eric. Spot on here, because you've transcended evening. You're well past evening, and you're really into the middle of the night, and that's when you're supposed to feel that presence and that theological import for you aesthetically is at its strongest, and we see that. I treat this throughout. I mean, you bring up something, Eric, that's very important here for Americans on this side of the pond. When you talk about ghost stories, we talk about the fall. We talk about autumn, and that's the opening of my book. I mean, that's my quote. What autumn brings. It's so important to us because we all kind of love that. But over in Europe, especially in the United Kingdom, it's winter. And
yes,
especially Christmas, that we find the most fertile ground for ghosts and ghost stories.
Well, look at the Christmas Carol. I mean,
yeah, that's
there you
go.
Dickens had many more Christmas stories that had ghosts.
Yeah,
Carol.
Yeah, the Christmas Carol or other winter stories. There was one written by, and people wouldn't think this person to write anything. He was a political theorist. Very practicing Catholic by the name of Russell Kirk. He wrote The Conservative Mind years ago. Very famous, but he wrote as a hobby. He loved to write ghost stories, and his most famous one, award-winning one, he wrote about it during a snowstorm in winter.
Well, now that you mention it, you're right. Over across the pond, all these major ghost-type tales do take place in winter, not October like in our culture. But why in winter, do you think? Why is it? Because it's the cold? Is it the isolation? Why did they choose to spotlight winter as the backdrop?
Joel, good question. I would think just offhand, just looking at this kind of prima facie, that in autumn we have a nearness towards decay. Things, the leaves change, and we know that something, in other words, the greenness of spring and botanical life and arborial life and nature's life is in decay, and it's, in other words, it's dying. But before it's dying, it's given us one heck of a treat, right? I mean, people go to your neck of the woods, Minnesota. They love Minnesota.
Oh yeah,
in the
it's
fall.
beautiful.
Right, people go to New England. They go to Michigan. There are all kinds of places for that. But when you get to downright decay, when you see those snow-laden fields where everyone's indoors and you hardly see a soul out, especially now. I mean, I live in Chicago, but I'm a native Californian. I didn't see snow until I was like 16. And then I didn't see anything like it until I moved here in Chicago. But it never, I mean, it always has I always have a fresh take on it that, you know, if you have to leave at like 8 o'clock to go out to the drugstore or something for a quick errand, that you may be the only one on the road in a very big suburb because of the weather.
Yeah, you could very well find yourself alone because of the weather, and then your imagination runs wild.
It does run wild. I mean, what did the poem from Edgar Allan Poe, the Raven, and I just give a quote here. I distinctly remember it was bleak December, and each separately dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. And that's from Edgar Allan Poe right there. So bleak December, that's what we associate with winter, kind of bleakness, and because December is the first month there, I think it introduces so much.
Yeah, I would definitely, and just the way that, like, Poe wrote and painted such a rich tapestry of terror, really. I mean, it kind of ramped up as it went, but really the beginning, the first menacing part was the winter.
Right, and he braced those psychological depths. I mean, getting to Poe for a second, I almost feel sorry for the guy because I wonder what his inner life was like and his interior life to kind of pen these stories of such really terror, psychological terror. It's no wonder that he lived a short and, for some, a sad life.
Oh, yeah. I mean, a lot of them were probably written from inner demons. You know, just the way he felt.
That's exactly right. I mean, part of the book, at the end of the book, I talk about briefly the psychological aspects, and it's important. And you find this crossover between ghosts and sci-fi, etc. I mean, you know, who's the paragon of sci-fi literature for decades, and some people still see him as the master, was Philip K. Dick. And you know, he wrote this famous line, you know, to live is to be haunted. And I think, you know, if you look at Dick's personal life, because, you know, the truth often follows biography, you see that was really true.
Yeah. Well, I have to ask you, coming from a philosophy angle, what is up with the new rise of the zombie stuff going on? I mean, where does that kind of fall in all that?
You know, zombie chic is everywhere. I thought that it would kind of, you know, we saw, like, every couple of years you might see a vampire chic, werewolf chic. You know, we went sci-fi in the 70s, and that kind of died out. But zombie fashion has lasted a lot longer than I ever thought. And I think because it embraces apocalyptic thinking is why it's so popular, because it has a lot of adjunct movements tied to it. And, you know, you guys tell me what you think as well, because you deal with this more than I do. And you know, the prepping movement, you know, people buying, you know, 1,200 cases of water, to put in their 400 square foot apartment, that kind of stuff. And you have that going on, and this kind of ties into to zombies. You know, people, you know, purchasing silos to live in and to convert and all. You know, the Y2K thing. I think that zombies was an aftermath, almost a logical aftermath to something like that.
Well, and it seems that there's a whole group of people now that firmly believe that the zombie apocalypse is upon us or will happen soon.
Yeah,
and I find that funny. I find that hilarious because here we are showing the power of storytelling.
Yeah, and the Walking Dead and the undead, it's kind of like, you know, Dracula's one person, and Dracula had a few minions, and but never more than, you know, just a handful. But with zombies, you have Dracula run wild. You know, the majority of the population now are the undead.
Oh, yeah, by far. But getting back to the book, when you're writing the book, and you were really immersing yourself in, you know, the world of the paranormal and philosophy, were you shocked at some of the parallels in ghost stories to philosophy, of the ones that are allegedly true ghost stories? I've noticed, like, Amityville, I can't even say the word tonight for some reason, in New York, Amityville Horror. If you read that book closely, it really sets a backdrop. There's a stage there. The house is menacing looking at you from the street.
Yeah, and who can forget the original? You know, the Margot Kidder, James Brolin.
Oh my
That's,
gosh!
You know, kind of the era I grew up in. That was scary enough for me. I didn't see any of the remakes. Although I heard that the latest one or the last one was even better than the original. So I'll have to check that out. But I think this is a very good question because you can be the most logical person in the world and still find a graveyard eerie.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Who doesn't?
Yeah,
show
or
up.
Pretend you and the wife and you and the family you want to move, so you're going through house hunting and what fun that is. Would you look askance at the realtor? Would you think twice if someone were to just kind of open up with this? Well, this house is purported to be haunted. I mean,
yeah,
or
I would. I would
or
think
there was
twice.
a major crime committed in this house. Well, would you think twice about buying?
Yes, I would. To be honest with you,
I would too.
So
I don't think with that. I want to.
You know, and
it's like California. I'm from California too, Tim. By the way, I'm
Yeah.
a native Southern Californian myself, transplanted to Ohio. So it really is a matter of I want to be able. It's the geography of Southern California. It's perfect because you don't have to go very far to have all these different kinds of settings. You have mountains, you have the beach, you have the desert, you got any kind of weather you want, all within 100 miles or so. So
and year round.
I'm making an analogy to hauntings. I don't want to live in it. I want to be able to go to it and then come back. And that's that's my California mentality. I love to be able to go to the snow, but then frickin' leave. Man, I don't want to live in it.
Yeah, because the
So
beach
I don't want to
factor
live in a haunting any more than I want to live in the snow. I want to go there, have my fun, and leave. So that's how I feel. I don't want it in my home. You know, that's
and that's a great point because even when we dream, we're in charge. Because how many of us during a dream, like you're in a dream state, and the dream is so powerful and so overwhelming that in order to escape it, in order to effect safe exit, you just wake yourself up. Okay, this is too much. It's too intense. I'm out of here. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you bolt straight up and say, dream over. Because we like that. We kind of like the wild side to kind of dabble in it, but we love the safety of going home at night. And that's why young people, when they go out, they like to go out. You know, people have fun at these big clubs that are a little exotic and stuff. But I think one of the best parts of the night is getting in a car and driving home safely.
It's danger in controlled settings.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
And that's the appeal of horror movies in general. You know, you're able to put yourself vicariously through that experience. You're able to project yourself onto the screen, into the characters. If it's well done, you're able to empathize and go through what they go through. But then, man, when it's over,
going home.
Yeah,
the lights come up in the theater. You had a good scare. You go home. You go to bed, and you don't think twice about it, unless the haunting finds you.
That's right. You give the big exhale out of the theater, and people love that. How many theaters have we been to where there's a ghost movie? And I remember seeing the original John Carpenter's Halloween. I think I was in high school, early in high school when that was playing, and some people in the audience were talking to the screen like, "Hey, don't go in there! Don't look at that!
Don't go in the closet! Don't go in there!"
It's that vicarious pleasure that we all derive from it.
Mm-hmm. And like movies like The Exorcist, Halloween, and at the end of a really scary movie, it's almost like there's a mass exhale from the whole audience. You know
that is so true. And talking about philosophy for a second, Aristotle said that's why people love tragic plays, because they revolve around that word catharsis, literally to purge. That in watching other people, bad things happen to other people, right? You're purging those emotions from yourself, and we like that. In other words, my life may be bad, but it's nowhere near as bad as Oedipus, or it's nowhere near as bad as what's going on in Halloween or one of the other horror movies.
Mm-hmm. Well, exactly. We live vicariously tragedy through them.
Yes, that's. I think that's exactly it, and that's one of the points, and that's one of the points why we enjoy them so much.
we're able to live out the spooky, go through it, enter the tunnel, the tunnel of fun, the fun house, and have our thrills and our fears, and to a certain extent face them. We're not really facing them, but we're kind of facing them. It's like practicing facing our fears. And then we're able to come to a conclusion and walk out the door laughing. That's another interesting element I always find is, sure, people scream when they're frightened, certainly when they're startled, but almost as common a reaction is laughter, nervous laughter when you're scared. Why do you think that is?
That's a good question. We once had at the college, we once had a detective in. We did a local, just a spoof on CSI. And he once told us that at a crime scene, you would be kind of shocked. And I said, what do you mean shocked? Because there's a crime, obviously we'd be shocked, especially if we're not used to it. And he goes, no, even before you see the body or something like that the detectives aren't as in a serious mood as you would think. They're not kind of like grim-faced. He goes, they engage first in what they call gallows humor.
Sure.
Right.
And it helps them to get through what they're about to see, and it helps them to get through the rest of what's going to be a long, dark night.
Well, yeah, I mean, if the only thing you ever see is just the bad side of humanity, you got to have some type of outlet first to laugh a bit and get yourself psyched to see this horrible, horrible thing.
Which leads me to believe, and I'm glad you brought this up, Eric, that, maybe laughter's as deep a purge as, maybe comedy's as deep a purge as tragedy.
Well, it may be because, they say the best comedy is basically tragedy that happens to other people.
Misery loves company?
No, yeah. The Chinese American philosopher, Lin Yutang once said that happiness is getting your hair cut twice a month and watching your neighbor fall off his roof. and when I tell people that, they, what? And then they understand that there's that kind of Schadenfreude.
Yeah.
And that human beings, if it's happening to someone else, it's not okay, but we're much more accepting, except if it happens to us.
Better you than me.
Exactly.
Yeah, but we're all that way.
As Morrissey sang, we're happy. We're happy. We're never happy when our friends are successful.
Ouch.
And no greater critic of success than failure. So.
Wow. Well, that's harsh, guys. That's really harsh.
I took a wrong turn here somewhere. I did.
Really? And poor Eric's over there going, yeah, it sucks when your friends are successful, let me tell you.
Yeah.
No.
We hate it when our friends are successful.
But it's all part of the human existence. I mean, these are all emotions we all have. I mean, you see someone that wins a lottery, and the first thing you say is, I wish it would have been me.
That's why it's one of the 10 Commandments. Don't be envious. Don't be jealous.
Yeah, exactly. The last two have to deal with coveting.
Mm-hmm.
You're not supposed to put out your lawn chair and just stare at your neighbor's weed eater that you want so much,
No, you're not. Yeah, you can't drool out.
Nor his manservant, nor his maidservant,
you're right.
Nor his cow, or his donkey, or
anything really. Just divert your eyes from his property.
His electric toothbrush.
No.
Wow, he sure has a nice fence now. I wonder why. Could it be staring all those days? But philosophy is one of those, I guess at the very least, or maybe the very most, subjective too. I mean, it's all how you look at it.
It is, Joel, it is how you look at it, up to the point where the truth enters the room. Because one of the things that we see with philosophy today, one of the scourges that people who are dedicated to the truth in the sciences, not only philosophy, in the humanities and the arts and sciences in general, is relativism. Everyone thinks that, look, I have my own truth, but if everyone has their own truth, there is no truth.
Very true. Wow, that's deep.
I mean, that's why we have epistemology, and that's why that is so important.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Eric, because I just read something the other day that I was, at which I was shocked. It was, do we live in a world where there's a disinclination to think and to think well? And this one, and the reason I bring that up is because when we look at media use, I mean, the TV, just the TV now is on, not in a household, but for a person, per person, we're watching 5 hours or more of TV a day per person. And when you add screen time with social media and the net, you're talking another hour and 32 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
So along comes the National Center for Biotechnological Information, and they join with the U.S. National Library of Medicine, and they find out that the average attention span for an American is 8 seconds.
That's it? 8 seconds? I think those houseflies have longer attention span.
And
What
I
are we
was
talking
shocked at that. Pardon?
We're going
What are we talking
Well,
about?
actually, we need to run a break, but we'll touch on that when we come back. Your 8 seconds that you have to pay attention, and Eric will gather his thoughts. In the meantime, don't go anywhere, everybody. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. It's longer than 8 seconds, so don't run away.
Ranger Station, Ranger speaking.
Yeah, hi. I'd like to report a bear sighting.
Location.
My backyard.
Oh, your backyard. Try telling a bear that.
I did, and this bear talked back.
Talking bear, that's rich.
No, wait, it was Smokey Bear.
Smokey? Why didn't you say so?
I did say so.
Continue.
I was burning yard waste.
No, boy.
He told me to burn legally and responsibly, and to remember that if it's too hot to touch, it's too hot to leave.
And as always, he's right. You know, 9 out of 10 wildfires are caused by humans. That means 9 out of 10 wildfires can be prevented.
Yeah, I know that now.
Thanks to me.
Actually, thanks to Smokey.
As usual, the talking bear gets all the credit. Get your Smokey on. Always burn responsibly and contact your local fire department for open burning regulations. Because 9 out of 10 wildfires can be prevented. Brought to you by Smokey Bear, the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council. Learn more at SmokeyBear.com.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Taking a family of 5 to the amusement park can cost a small fortune.
Oh, yeah. So to save some money, we thought, hey, let's bring the amusement park to us.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right. Step right up, young man. Are you ready to ride the Wacky Waterfall?
That's just the bathtub with the shower head running.
Nope, it's the Wacky Waterfall.
It's the shower, Dad.
Waterfall.
Wacky.
There's an easier way to save. To get a free rate quote, go to geico.com. Then buy online, over the phone, or at your local Geico office.
It's your ideas, work, and creativity that make it your yard. At Ace, we're here to help with hoses and sprinklers to nurture growth, gardening tools for the shape of good things to come, even the right fertilizer and bug killers to make the grass a little greener. You'll find it all now at Ace, your place, with everything you need for your yard, plus helpful advice, almost like we're right there. Ace,
The helpful place.
Hi, Tom Bodette. If you can hear me, then you have an internet connection, which means you can do cool things online, like listen to streaming radio, obviously, or watch a video of a monkey washing a cat. Let your freak flag fly. Or you can book a room at a great price at Motel6.com. Isn't the internet wonderful? Everything you want right at your fingertips, and whoa, did not need to see that. I'm Tom Bodette for Motel 6, and we'll leave the light on for you.
Excuse me. Thousands of cancer patients can't afford a place to stay when the best treatment is far from home. A room shouldn't be the difference between life and death. Let's make sure that everyone who needs a room gets one. Let's make some noise. Let's help the American Cancer Society finish the fight.
Text ROOM to 41518 to donate $10.
Do you have a question for our guest tonight? Don't feel like calling the show? Not a problem. Email those questions to afterhoursam@gmail.com. Again, that's afterhoursam@gmail.com. Welcome back to, the most boring 8 seconds of your life, After Hours AM. No, just kidding. When we left, now, I'm your host, Joel Sturgis, of course, and of course, with me is...
Eric Christopher Olson.
Wow, very official. Very official right there. Okay, when we were leaving, 8 seconds is all human beings have for an attention span, which is really pathetic when you think about it, because there is a creature out there that beat us. And what was that creature, sir?
It was a goldfish. A goldfish has an attention span of 9 seconds, and
That
you heard
sucks.
it here first.
That sucks, man. That's not even fair. I would like to think that I can pay attention longer than 8 seconds. But in reality, when you really think of the nuts and bolts of how you pay attention, you're right. About 8 seconds. That's it.
The time it takes from another jingle from a text.
Yeah, that's about... And speaking of zombies, too, the people that look down at their smartphones constantly and walk... And it's like they're glued to these things. I mean, they don't even look up anymore.
And you're right. And now it's not even the phone. You have to have a watch that tells you that can do 30 different things.
Yeah, it's starting to really, and I'm sure you see this. It's starting. They do say that the smartphone is actually dumbing us down.
Well, I think this constant need to be entertained and this constant need for information. Has really set a scenario where technology has far outpaced wisdom. Mm-hmm. In other words, we have so much technology we don't even know how to use it. We don't know how to prioritize it, and I don't even think we understand it. Because what happens, at least in my case, when the phone goes out, the first thing you do is go, I need a new battery, mm-hmm. and if that doesn't work, the second thing you do is, I'll trash it, I'll just buy a new one.
Yeah, get rid of it, get a new one, be done with it.
Gone.
Yep.
You know, one of the best things, and this is old already, this was the 70s, I guess, but the most insightful lines, one of them I've ever heard about technology, is it begins with a blessing, but ends with a curse, making life easier, but making it worse.
Oh.
That you remembered that, man. You're not falling prey to that 8-second business. That's...
Wow.
Well, it's one of my favorite performers. His name is Kevin Ayers. He was real big in England, lesser known here. He was in the original Soft Machine, and he had this real eccentric singer-songwriter. But yeah, that one line, it just really stuck with me, and because it just hit me so deeply. And at the time, I wasn't thinking about it. I was thinking about it actually more in transportation terms. I was thinking in terms of the various, airplanes and whatnot. I was actually, when it really dawned on me, I was writing something about the kind of the history of airplane crashes and whatnot, and saying, hey, at least if you're on the ground in a car or in a train or whatever, walking, at least if something goes wrong, you're not going to automatically catapult to your death.
Amtrak found this out.
To plummet and plunge into a fiery pit of hell and despair.
Wow, and unfortunately,
over. You run out of gas, the car stops going. Run out of gas in a jet, you're dead. So that was where that came from.
I'm sorry, Eric. Your rant was longer than 8 seconds. What'd you say again?
He's doing well.
I'm focused. This is something I think about. So, yeah, I mean, now move forward, 4 decades, and now we're in the 00s. And, yes, I mean, I couldn't agree with you guys more. I have absolutely made a point of avoiding getting any more involved than I'm absolutely required to do with a smartphone. And that's because the nature of my work, my job, I just sit there in front of the stupid desktop, or in the case of the show, I'm in front of a laptop all day long. I'm in front of the computer. If I'm doing email, if I'm writing something, if I'm communicating with someone, I'm doing it. It's there. I'm available. When I get off, when I finally, after my 12, 14-hour day, I'm off of the computer, away from the computer, if I'm in the car, if I'm traveling, the absolutely last thing I want to do is for people to be able to just get a hold of me really easily with a text, or certainly by email. I don't want any of that. I want my phone mobile phone to basically just be a phone. That doesn't mean I don't know and don't appreciate the convenience of it. Like when we travel, for example, my wife, who works for one of those companies, I'm not allowed to say, but who works for one of the very large computer and electronics.
It's a fruity joint, let me tell you.
And it's fruity there where they work. And so, obviously she has her smartphone, the latest one, and she keeps up with things. And sure, it's very convenient to be able to tweet something because I'm, big in social media. That's part of what I do, is to build the brand. I'm very engaged with social media, Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, and the like. So to be able to do that on the run, from a location. When my daughter was with me when we went to the Rock Hall induction, she of course had her phone, so she's taking the pictures, she's sending out the tweets, she's doing the Instagrams. So I don't have to. So in a way, I'm a little bit hypocritical. But for my own life, my everyday normal life, it is such a pleasure to not be a slave to that little mobile computer.
Oh, I'm a slave. I've thought about getting. I happen to own one of the Samsung smartphones. I have so many times thought about chucking that thing in the lake.
Right, or at least save that. I mean, maybe take a tech Sabbath on a weekly basis. Like there's a one day or one afternoon a week or something where you just don't. You just leave it at home.
I mean, wouldn't that be wonderful? Because when I forget my phone, it's the most peaceful, liberating time I have. It's just like, oh my God, I remember the days when you could go places and if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, they'd leave a message on an answering machine.
So at least you had time there. Now everyone's available 24/7.
Yeah. It's I think in a lot of ways it's also disconnected us.
Yeah, it's certainly disconnected our thinking. One of the things, and from at least those of us who, like looking at the paranormal and find, as I do, a lot of entertainment. I think it's fun looking at late night radio. Often, one of the things that we're coming face to face with is what happens when science fiction becomes fact.
Mm-hmm.
Or how are we going to deal with, artificial intelligence and its progress?
Yes. Yeah, is there going to be a Skynet? Is there going to be Terminators running around taking us out? I mean, look at Star Trek. The technology that they had in Star Trek, barring the Enterprise, of course, the ship, we have better technology than they did in the show.
And that's kind of scary. And when you really look at what's being bandied about as a subject, this transhuman movement and stuff like that, it's certainly it's crossed the line from concern to just downright scary.
It is scary. There's a lot of things about it that are scary, and now as a professor and you teach kids and you go into philosophy of the paranormal in your class, do you find that grabs them more than most anything?
Certainly, people love talking about it. They do, because we're so close now to technology and closer than we ever were. Think about how tied we were, how tethered we were to technology back, say, in the 70s or 60s. I mean, you used a typewriter, we had cord phones, things like that. But now it's everywhere, and we see with it a lot of possibility. Sometimes I think we see too much possibility, that we think too much of ourselves in that, because we think, what did Aristotle and Plato know? They never had a driver's license. They let alone had a flat screen TV. We're far superior to them because we're better, again, at this technical stuff, or we're better consumers. But that's just not the case. It doesn't mean that we're better at thinking, not by any stretch of the imagination.
Now, do you think that one day George Orwell's 1984 will come to pass?
I hope not, because then we've gone from Plato's talking about a utopia in his republic to really a dystopia, which is the opposite. So
because we're watched everywhere we go now. We're monitored everywhere we go. You go online, you're monitored.
Yeah, I wonder just with simple things that they're experimenting with now, like drone delivery. How's that going to work? I mean, really, how are you going to deliver a pizza to drone, or what if it's misdelivered to a neighbor and stuff like that? You just wonder what happens if drone gets out of whack, or Eric was talking about a plane losing fuel. What happens if a drone loses its remote connection or something like that? I mean, then you find that the tragic is reality.
And then you don't get your double stuffed Super Supreme. I mean,
right.
you know
what you were waiting for from Amazon, you'll just have to wait another couple hours.
That's all.
Today.
But there are always going to be pimply faced kids that need jobs, so don't take away the pizza delivery part.
Yeah, I've done it. So
but when you're writing, getting back to the book here, quick, when you're writing the book, and it's a fabulous book, and everyone look it up.
Thank you.
Get over there, go to Amazon, get it. Better bookstores have it as well. I mean, it's new. How long has it been out? About a week now, right?
Right, week 10 days. Thank you, Joel. Thank you, Eric. Yeah, Haunted Beauty, Amazon, and Barnes & Noble. When I was writing, I did it more, and I open with this in the preface that, my primary motive was fun, because ghost stories should be fun. But also when you get into it, when we look at ghost stories, we think past a certain age that it's the subject for a lesser imagination. Mm-hmm. But it's really not. When we look at the writers of ghost stories, it's small wonder that we would ever entertain something like that. If you go down the list of ghost story writers, and I mean true ghost stories that entertain, a secular notion of the afterlife, you find Shakespeare, Sir Walter Scott. Mm-hmm. America's first ghost story, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, was by Washington Irving. You have Nathaniel Hawthorne, Edgar Allan Poe, Dickens, Twain, Ambrose Bierce, Henry James. It just keeps on going. Joseph Conrad. These great writers that even went well into the 20th century, who talk about these things. We find that it's not only it's the stuff every bit for adults as it is for the younger crowd.
Yeah, I remember being a kid and having the bejesus scared out of me by Legend of the Sleepy Hollow.
Oh. There you go. Or someone like Ambrose Bierce, who once, in his The Devil's Dictionary, he defined a ghost as the outward sign of an inward fear.
Yes.
And I thought that was, again, it's very good. That's incisive. He brings a lot of things psychological to it.
And that seems to be what scares us the most. Like we said earlier, keep your serial killers on film, like your Jasons and Michael Myers. My God, it's the unknown. It's the where we could end up one day, all of us, that really always grabs us, because quite honestly, the boogeyman in the closet, it's good for a jump scare, but if you truly want a psychological scare where it makes you think, philosophy really comes into play in the morality tales and in the tales of, is there an afterlife? And
because when we look at a ghost story, the traditional ghost stories, we see that there's an evocation of time and place here. In other words, they set a mood that's almost unprecedented in other stories. With ghost stories, you have this understanding of time that you don't have in a lot of places, because obviously in a ghost story, the past is always involved, because we're talking about ghosts. So the past runs well into the future, runs well into the present, and we find ourselves situated there, always mindful of history. And that's why one of the words I touch upon in the book is a favorite word of mine, because human beings love to do that, and that's nostalgia. Are ghost stories treasured psychologically, aesthetically as well, because we're nostalgic as human beings. I mean, someone asks you, hey, where'd you go to high school? And you tell them, knowing full well that, that high school is going to haunt me literally the rest of my life, because I'm going to have to go the 5th year, the 10th year, the 15th year, 20th year, and so on.
Yeah, exactly. And for most of us, high school wasn't so much fun.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's a growing period for all of us, and you tend to see that. People would come up to you and say, well, it was a very good sports at high school, but I've taken up sports in college and I'm much better, or I wasn't really good at writing in high school, but I love it now in college, and I hope I love it the rest of my life. So you see that people forget sometimes that high school is basically preparation for life rather than life itself. I mean, what's that old joke? Life is high school with money. I think it's far more than that, you know.
Well, I wanted to agree with you guys with what you were just saying about what are the things, what kind of fear, what kind of stories, what kind of images are the ones that really, really disturb us. And just for me, anything that's unrealistic, so almost always the slasher stuff just doesn't bother me because it just doesn't look real, you know? It doesn't feel real to me. Yeah. But the psychological things, those can be real. Those play on my mind. I'll have nightmares about things that are plausible. The greatest reaction, and I don't mean it in a good way, I just mean in the largest way, that I have ever had to any kind of video experience, so TV or movie, it was only about a year ago, and not necessarily what you would have thought of at all. I was watching the Vikings series. And
okay.
We got into it because we're all Norwegian, so we're all Vikings. But it's really well made, and it's actually very, very powerful. But there was a extraordinarily, for me, disturbing torture scene. And the reason it bothered me so much is because it looked and felt so realistic. Like this really did happen. People really did do that to other people. And apparently, this is all in retrospect, of course, I had some sort of empathetic reaction kick in. I literally fainted. I passed out, dead away. My wife about lost her mind. She thought I'd had a stroke. She thought I was dead. She had no idea what was going on. I had fainted. That was how much this scene impacted me. And nothing like that has happened before or after in conjunction, you know, with any sort of video experience, watching anything, or even going to haunted houses, all that. None of that. Reading. This was the one time in my life when I was most impacted by something external, by something fictional. And it's because of the realism. And so that's, I think, the source. And people don't want it to be too real. I think that's part of why we like the more fakey stuff, and the gorier and the bloodier in a lot of ways seems even more fake, I think, than realistic, for example, you know, crime scenes, that kind of stuff. And I think we're able to kind of explain all that away, laugh all that away. But things that are realistic, things that really could happen, that's the real enduring terror and horror.
Yeah, one, I think a silver lining, Eric, and you talking about this is it reveals your humanity as well, that you found this so objectionable that, you know, you just shut down. That, you know,
I literally shut down. You're right.
Yeah. I reject this, and I think that says a lot about you as a person, because I'm kind of like the same way anymore. I can't watch hyper-violent stuff anymore like I would when I was 16. And I don't mean just, you know, chainsaw flicks that I never liked in the first place. I'm talking about like watching boxing or, you know, violent sports or any of this. I just refuse to watch it.
Well, it's like people that get off on that UFC, you know, Ultimate Fighting Champions, which I understand it's a sport, and I understand it has a big following, and I don't begrudge anyone for liking it, but I watch it, and I look at two guys beating each other silly. Why? Oh, I mean, it's just so, I don't want, it's kind of appalling to me that society, okay, here's the thing I never understood about society. We can see deplorable, absolutely horrid depictions of violence. But my God, they show the human form, the woman form, on television, nude or otherwise. Oh my God, can't watch that. But we're okay watching just horrible violence. What's the deal with that? Because in my mind, like, the human body is beautiful. God made the human body, or whoever you feel made the human body, so it's a beautiful thing. But violence is always ugly no matter how you package it.
Yeah, there's always kind of been that strange dichotomy. And again, there's been criticism in Europe coming towards America in this, that, look, you know, you criticize us for our films and showing R-rated movies and maybe having more nudity on public access TV than you do, but you're far more violent.
Oh,
and just as you don't understand our nudity, we certainly don't understand your violence. So there is that kind of cross-current of criticism here.
Because, make love, not war. You know what I mean? And if you're giving kids or anyone a steady diet of violence, what are they going to be desensitized to? Violence.
Well, video games, my God, I hate to sound like an old fart, but I mean, I'm telling you that when you see the level of viciousness in so many of these games, I mean, it's just, it's insane. I agree with both you guys. I do not want to see it. I don't like to see people hurting each other, certainly for no reason. Now, it's a little different. I'm okay with an action, quote unquote action movie. I'm fine with the superhero movies because it's not real. And I know it's not real. And it doesn't feel real, and it's not even pretending to be real. But where the violence is realistic and where the emotions are realistic, I find that very troubling. Boxing, I don't want to see it. I stopped watching that long, long ago. Mm-hmm. Interesting point. I think there are some broader societal changes going on. Boxing, not that long ago, 50, 60 years ago, I think it was the 50s, was still the single most popular sport in the United States, especially on television. Boxing helped establish television.
Even today, it was just, last month we saw, 300 million plus sporting event.
But that's the exception, I think.
Yeah, and that is, you're right, that's the exception. The golden age of boxing went out with the golden age of horse racing, and it went away, and I think it's better, but we still kind of like that violence. It doesn't say very much for us, I think.
Yeah.
It doesn't say very much that's positive.
I think
but it's a lot that we're talking about it. So.
I think the last great boxing match or boxers that we saw, I think Mike Tyson, with all the things that went on there, was kind of like the last hurrah for boxing being looked at as a serious sport.
Yeah, and look how he ended. I mean, his last known fight was he took a little bit of an ear of an opponent, and it's just kind of...
went...
That's how,
people started viewing it more in the arena of pro wrestling rather than a sport anymore because of the level of just craziness that was in it, with it.
Yeah, and when we, speaking of violence and that, and watching it, if you look at the popularity of football, pro and college football as team sports, far out outweigh in terms of volume and in terms of viewership any of the other sports. In fact, even combined, and you look at the language that we use in football: block, sack, tackle, hit. I mean, it's a lot different than, say, baseball language. Fair, foul. Yeah. Although baseball has its own, right? Strike, grand slam, but it's still not, football violence.
Like football even uses some military lingo, like blitz.
Right.
So it's...
it is absolutely, there's no question. It is a pseudo military sport. There's no question. Even football, though, what's happening now, it's through the concussion. It always comes down to insurance, doesn't it? Insurance has all of a sudden decided, whoa, we don't like football very much because there's all these damn concussions. And now pro football has been around long enough that, have you heard what the life expectancy is of a former professional, an NFL player? It's in their 50s.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, it's like 30 years. That's at least 20 years less than a non-player. I mean, you can't say that's a coincidence.
Right, and the average career of a professional football player now hovers around 3 years.
Yeah.
And that is so because it is so violent. I mean, you have some of the strongest and fastest human beings on just that 100-yard field, and that's a scary proposition in itself.
Yes, exactly. But I hate to cut it short. We only have about a minute and a half left of the show. Boy, where this 2 hours go. Want to tell everyone where they can get your book, where they can get a hold of you, all that kind of good stuff.
Sure. Haunted Beauty, Aesthetics and Mindfulness in the Traditional Ghost Story is available at Amazon or Barnes & Noble as of this month. It's available in hard copy. and digitally. It is electronic as well. Again, my name is Tim Weldon. I teach at the University of St. Francis. We're just southwest of Chicago, some 40 miles or so, a little more than that. And I really have enjoyed being here with you guys tonight. It's been a lot of fun.
No, we've enjoyed having you. Great conversation. Really, really enjoyed it. And everyone, go pick up your own copy of the book. You're going to love it. Check it out, and you're going to view philosophy in a whole new way. I guarantee you that. But until next time, everyone, take care of each other, love each other, and remember, keep reading those really, really cool ghost stories. Thank you for listening to this edition of After Hours AM, and please remember to like us on Facebook and also follow us over on Twitter.